welcome to Creative Block. We're your host, Gene.
And V, we interview people in the animation industry about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We asked people on Twitter if they had specific topics they want us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
And today with us, we have Jacob Strick. Hey!
Whoa!
Hey there, it's me, Jacob Strick, Jacob Aaron Strick. Aaron because that was Elvis's middle name, Jacob because it's short for Jake Gitz from Chinatown and the Two Jakes, which I've never seen. And Strick because that's just the moniker I was saddled with, and it's not strict with a T, it's S with a trick.
This is great. I love it.
Amazing.
I like this intro. Jake, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, I'm a writer, which is what I tell everyone, including myself. But I have many other interests. For instance, I went to school as an audio engineer, a director, an editor. I have worked in music.
Like this radio voice you're doing.
In live action, and currently in animation. I started out in animation. I moved away from it. I came back. I'm really happy to be here. And I'm happy to be here on the show with you, Gene.
Wow. I love that. Yeah, you do a whole lot of different things. You're extremely knowledgeable about a lot of different, what would I say? A lot of different things.
Jake of all trades. And you know what?
Jake of all trades.
It's been a blessing and a curse, which I'm excited to talk about on this podcast.
I would love that. Tell us your earliest sort of forays into the creative fields. Where did you kind of get your start as a kid?
Pretty much right out of the gate. My parents were very supportive of anything that me and my younger brother Sam wanted to do. And I saw my dad, and I wanted to emulate him a bit. He was a musician. He was a writer. He had come to Los Angeles from New York because he had sold a script while he was working in the insurance industry. So I followed suit. I kind of made up stories that I would dictate to him. He would write them out in an early version of Final Draft. He would like this. I'm like learned slugging and all sorts of things just when I was.
Well, explain slugging.
When a scene is introduced in a script, you not only know where it is, but whether you're inside or outside, day or night, or anything else that you would need to know when setting the scene.
Okay. Yeah, explain it for those of us that don't know as I look around.
Yeah, it's not something you see always in animation, but it's definitely something you see in a screenplay for sure. Because it when you're breaking down a script, you kind of need to know when you need to be at a location or what you should make it look like.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean a screenplay. It's like a recipe.
Yeah, that's cool. So you were writing pretty early on then.
Yeah, I mean, in so much that you're writing like I remember when the game Prince of Persia came out. What was it? I was playing it, and let's see, we were invading Iraq the first time, and I was writing a story that was I consciously knew that Persia was Iran, and somehow it all got mixed together, and I wrote fan fiction for Prince of Persia.
Wow.
And yeah, that was in second grade.
Prince of Persia.
I know, right?
Of all things.
Yeah, but I was like a normal kid. I was drawing like Piccolo and Vegeta, and
yes,
and I just loved reading. I basically didn't interact with a lot of people. Instead, I would find a corner and just read books. Like the Lord of the Rings trilogy was one long summer. It was just out in the sand, just baking there. And this is before the movies were announced. And I was just a nerd.
Yeah.
And my brother was he was drawing more, he was sculpting more, and I kind of I was like, I'm the writer around here. I'm just going to focus on writing. But, I took art classes too. So it's I had an easier time conceiving ideas than I could execute with my hands. At the same time, I was writing music on the piano because we had a baby grand that we inherited from my great-grandmother, Roz. She was a piano teacher. So that came out from New York too. So I was on the piano. I was writing music. I was writing stories. I was like, I want to make comic books. But, it's just I don't know anyone else who's doing this stuff. And one day,
one day.
it was the year 2001, and it was I want to say a couple days. It was like the weekend after 9/11. And this girl appears in my house, and it's Zoe. I've never met her before, or at least not formally. I've seen her before. I've gone to a local production of the JCC. They were doing Guys and Dolls, and she was in it. She was on stage. I didn't know her then. And here she is in the house, and we immediately hit it off. Actually, we don't immediately hit it off because I say to her as she's there, the deadline for this student film festival is over in an hour. I just need to upload this file. Can you wait? Okay. Can you wait like a minute, and then I'll be with you? And so she hangs out with my brother, and there's like a whole alternate universe where they become best friends.
That's amazing.
But then the hour's up, and I go downstairs, and I'm like, "Hi, I'm Jacob. It's so nice to meet you." And you know, she blew my mind. Like, she was drawing the weirdest, coolest stuff. And the reason we met is because our mutual friend decided we were both weird. And we had
that's the best kind of meeting.
We had to meet each other. And they were right. And she was just like, I've never seen anyone who like joked around, thought the way she does, and just dresses a certain way, and it's just like, this is the coolest person I've ever met in my life. And she asked me, hey, I'm doing a comic book. Do you want to be my writer? And I'm like, yes, I do. At the same time, also, I was making a website with my brother called penguinbros.com. So I definitely had some creative outlets. He would program Flash games. Remember those? I would write songs in GarageBand. We even ran a few interviews on the site. This is Web 1.0, but I interviewed the creators of Homestar Runner just because I thought it was neat.
Fuck yeah.
If you go on Wikipedia, Penguin Bros is a citation because we actually learned something about Missy Palmer's relationship with the Chapmans. But anyway, that's a side note. Point is, I was interested in art and artists and webcomics. I went to Comic-Con starting in 2001. So it was just like, okay, I was on that path, but I didn't know how to focus it. I had a comic I was obsessed with, by the way, called Little Gloomy. It was published by SLG, by Landry Walker and Eric Jones, and they're still making comics together. But this was a big break for them because they were getting published in something called Disney Adventures, and I became
Disney Adventures.
Oh my god, it was so great. That Nickelodeon magazine had the best comics, and like, I really appreciate that in retrospect because it introduced me into a lot of great people. But I got to meet them at Comic-Con, and I was like, I am your biggest fans. And the first thing Landry's like, do not get in comics, do not become a writer.
Yeah.
He had been doing it for like a decade.
Yeah.
He had been doing
This is something that I also heard when I went to a convention, and I was like, I want to make comics too. And the artist was like, don't do it.
Yeah. And
don't do
Stop, kid.
Hide.
Yeah, and he would still say that to this day, even though he's worked for majors and he's created original works, but it's just like it is struggle. It is, and it's not what it looks like from the outsides. And there's like a couple celebrities that completely skew what it's like to be a creator. It's just like that dominate the narrative. Of course, I didn't listen. I'm like, oh, I can do it. I had this crazy confidence that had not been beaten out of me yet. So Zoe and I, we were working on a comic book called Monkey Voodoo Doll. We did create one issue in full. I have a whole arc planned if we ever come back to it. I think it would be fun. It was sort of a mix between Alice in Wonderland and A Clockwork Orange.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was in a phase where I wanted to say something about, like, this is how I think the afterlife is.
Sure.
And I wanted to tell this big story about bodies and souls and monkeys and a battle for supremacy. I'm sure that was in the stew a little bit. Monkey Bone, the film we love to hate.
Yeah, that's kind of how it feels, huh? It's not very good, but it has good ideas.
And you know what? Sometimes from those good ideas, inspiration is born. You never know.
Absolutely.
The person who saw Monkey Bone goes on to create the cure for the atom bomb or something.
You never know.
You never know. So making Penguin Bros. I'm doing comics with Zoe. She starts doing animations in Flash as well. I'm helping out with that. 2 years go by. We start dating. 2 years go by. I leave for college.
Where's college for you?
I go to Vassar back east.
Mm-hmm.
I apply to 6 colleges. I get into all of them.
Oh, awesome.
That's really cool.
I decide I want to get away from home. I want to like strike out for myself a little bit. It's probably the longest period of time where I'm like away from my family and friends. So I'm in Poughkeepsie, New York, which is, up the Hudson. Zoe a year later applies to one school and gets in. It's called CalArts, but she gets in for experimental animation.
Never heard of it.
Well, she's not in the character program, though she does take character classes, and so she is really interested in stop motion. And
is she an experimental?
Yes,
Okay.
all the way through. So Butler Building, the Butt Hut. I am.
Butt Hut.
Yeah, I am basically. I'm focusing on getting an English minor, because I'm like I will be a writer, so I should be learning English. Because I have a baby brain and I don't know what words mean. But by that I mean it's like we have been set up for all our lives where it's like you're going to college, you're getting that degree, and then you can get a job. You have a piece of paper. It says you're smart. And boy,
we were told.
Did I get smart? It was liberal college, no more than 2,000 people, great professors, small classes, very intellectual. It was just I was having a good time. I was taking history courses. I was taking classics courses, which is Greek history. Just a lot of analytical writing, huge essays. I'm staying up all night. I'm writing. I'm having a great time. I write a thesis on not Icing the Body Electric, but Leaves of Grass. Okay, so Walt Whitman. I'm thinking about his spirituality because I'm thinking about my spirituality, English language, feel connected to the universe. And then the stock market crashes.
Oh no!
So
then it all came crashing down.
No joke. So if you graduated last year in 2020.
Yes.
Oh.
2000.
And I think
we're not there yet.
To some extent this year, but definitely last year when everyone was caught off guard. And I'm just going to jump ahead. So I was working then, and all the interns in the company were let go at the same time because they didn't have a plan for them.
Man, fuck.
And I was just thinking, well, A, that's the roughest thing that could happen to somebody coming out of school. Yeah. And B, it's worse now because you could actually die. But in my day, what happened was there was a global financial crash. During school, I interned at Nickelodeon on Tack and the Power of Juju. I was sort of an all-around production intern, but I was embedded with the writers because they knew I was interested in writing. Later, I became a on-set PA and then a post-PA on a show called Sid the Science Kid, which was filmed at the Jim Henson Studios. And I say filmed because it was actually done on a soundstage with motion capture, with like the same level of technology as Avatar. It was incredibly funny, and these were like vibrant, creative places to be. However, when I graduated, they stopped looking for people with limited experience like myself. They weren't hiring interns. They were only looking for people who had already been working.
So you're saying that like when you were interning at Nickelodeon, Jim Henson, and all these studios, it was when you were still attending college?
That's correct.
Awesome. And how was kind of like, I'm just kind of like going to ask you a couple questions here and there to clarify for the
Go
audience.
ahead.
How was the process for you applying for these internships, and how like was there multiple steps towards getting the internship, or did you just send an email? How did you find out about them? Kind of how was that process for you?
Absolutely. So there are multiple steps. When you are an undergrad, you can apply for these internships. Side note, if you are going to get your MFA, you cannot get these internships. They are not available for people who go back to school, which is deeply unfortunate. But I will say, because I was doing it for credit, and they want accreditation. You have to go through a teacher, in my case, that would sponsor you, and they would have requirements to make it a class. I had to keep a diary. I had to read books about Nickelodeon before I started working at Nickelodeon, so I knew the history of the company.
Interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so it wasn't just a free ride. It was like I really had to know everything about everything before I even got started, and have something to say at the end of it about my experience.
Man.
So it was really cool. But I heard about the Nickelodeon internship from a family friend who just said, "Hey, there is a Nickelodeon internship."
Yeah.
You know what? We were not as online when I was in school. I'm probably grandpa to most of you. When I started college, Twitter was less than a year old. Facebook was a year old, and YouTube wasn't even like on anyone's minds. No,
Yeah.
it was just like
different time.
That's how far back we go, and now so much of this stuff is online. And not all of my life advice is going to carry over, but I will say I think it was less competitive then. I think there was really
I think so.
less information out there.
Yeah.
And
I would believe that. Yeah.
But also I don't think there was also much like of a path for an intern either, and that it was just unpaid labor.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that when I wanted to get a job, nobody wanted me back either. And it was really upsetting, because it felt like I had direction and I was ready to like jump in and do something, and immediately hit a wall. And it was just rejections everywhere.
How would you say, like, how many rejections do you think you got? Kind of like
all of them.
Is it
every single
is it more like in the 10s or like in the 20s, or like I like hearing about that, because I think it's something that is very true about the industry, is that you have to be able to take all the rejections, because they're going to happen no matter what. So yeah, like I was wondering how, like, kind of how many you got, and like how, like, did it affect you emotionally?
Horribly.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Something they don't tell you when you get rejected is that you don't know why you're getting rejected.
Yeah.
And even when they tell you why, it's a lie usually. I've heard some really messed up things, by the way, when I've gotten rejected from jobs, where it was just like, why are you telling me that?
Oh no.
It's like, what? Can you say what?
Yeah, I'm gonna say one right now, and this is for a writing assistant job that a friend tried to get me, and it looked like I got the job. At the last second, I didn't, but I was told that it was like, oh, like a woman got your job, a black person got your job. It was just like this. And I was like, I don't fucking care. Like, why are you telling me that?
It's a weird thing to say. Okay.
And so basically, rejections hurt because they feel like they're your fault. But at the end of the day, why somebody gets chosen for a job is really known only to the people who have the ability to hire them.
That's very true. That is very true.
And you may think you know who does the hiring in the entertainment industry. Chances are you're wrong.
Yeah.
Because hiring is a conversation between creative people and corporate people.
Yes.
And in fact, the entire business of trying to get a job is about confidence, not confidence in yourself entirely, but getting someone to believe in you.
That is very true.
Because someone taking a chance on you is the most dangerous thing they can do. Someone taking a chance on somebody they already know or someone they think to be successful, that's an easy job. But to find somebody who's like, you're not sure, you look at their resume, you're like looking at them, it's like, do I hire this person and risk like wasting my money and time. That's
Yeah.
what's going through their head. And the best thing you can do is be cool and just be confident in yourself. Something I used to do all the time was be truthful. And the worst thing you can do is like you can kneecap yourself and be like, I've never done this before and I don't think I can.
Yeah, that's Mm-hmm.
On the opposite side, never say you can do something that you don't want to or don't feel comfortable doing. That will bite you in the end. But don't say things that make you sound like you are going to be a bad candidate either. And being truthful can make you sound foolish. It can make you sound like you're not up for the job, even though you are.
That's very true.
There's kind of a weird balance. I feel like, I mean, you're selling yourself, right?
Kind of. Oh man, I can talk about that.
Well, I think it's good to talk about. I don't think we've ever really gone into it. I think that like, I always see it as I'm selling myself. And you have to be a little bit of a greasy car salesman because there's going to be competition. Chances are, especially when you're starting out, you're not ready for the job. You don't have experience. And it's like what you were saying, like, you know, the employer is trying to take a chance on you. And so you got to reduce the amount of risk inside their head.
Absolutely.
And so I fudged every resume. I like talked myself up in every interview. And to the point of like bordering on lying, you know. I don't like to lie, but it's when you need a job and you're a nobody, you have to kind of exaggerate who you are and what you can bring to them.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a lot of interesting things that you say in that. I will kind of elaborate on it a little bit because when I applied for the visa to come over to the US, I had to do that. I had to talk myself up, which is a very hard thing to do when you come from France, because in France, if you even dare talking yourself up, it's perceived it's often perceived like you're arrogant, annoying, and like people really don't
American.
Yeah, it's really
American.
It's really not appreciated. So it's a really, really hard thing. And I know like sometimes coming from, it depends on like what kind of environment you grew up in, but sometimes that can be an obstacle for you, and you have to find a way to talk yourself up and I guess like within the limits of like your values, right? Like, so for me, I had to be like, all right, how can I take that experience that I have and not lie, but make it look really good? Because it's really easy to take the same experience and make it look like belittle the experience, or make it look like, wow, you actually did a lot. Like, for example, you know, so I think there's like something here that's really interesting. And it's like, how can you take your experience as a person and make it look positive and like
you're embellishing it.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely ran in the other direction. I've always had a hard time talking about myself because I'm afraid that people would see me in a light that I wasn't comfortable with. You know, if I said, my dad's a writer, and it's like, oh, you want to be a writer too? You're just a nepotist. You know, you're riding off of his coattails. So it's sort of like, I always felt like, how do I become my own person? And it's like, I've always had incredible access to things that other people don't, to education. Like, I wanted to go to college. That wasn't an issue for me like it is for so many others. I've never had to struggle when it comes to that, but everything else I was not prepared for, and I am not in my mind, riding on anyone's coattails, and it's been an incredibly long journey. So I just want to put this number out. I graduated in 2009, but I didn't get a job that I was looking for until 2 years ago.
So that makes it like how many years would you say? Like
a decade. In the desert of my life. So let's jump back for a little bit. I can't get a job. I'm being rejected. I feel like a loser. My parents are wondering why I can't get a job. I kindly explained there's a global catastrophe and the stock market has dropped and nobody is hiring right now. And it's not that millennials are lazy, which is a thing that really, really took off around that time. My parents, they're lovely, and they were like, you need to go on the street and find a job. You need to apply to 100 jobs a day. And it's just like, I could do that, but it's not working too. I'm trying everything I can. I kind of end up working for a lot of odd jobs, a lot of like live action, like 1-day photo shoots, 2-day commercial shoots, a Gillette ad. Have you ever heard I'm your Venus, I'm your fire for 14 hours in a row?
I'd like to not.
It's actually, that's a happy memory for me, but
okay.
So some music videos and commercial work, and I'm doing web design on the side because I had made my own website with my brother, so now I'm designing other people's WordPress blogs. And this is all like, okay, I feel like I'm a little scrappy. I'm finding work. It's not what I thought I was going to be doing. I'm starting to feel good, and that feeling erodes over time. I start to feel like, wow, I'm stuck doing stuff I don't want to do at all as a freelancer. I'm working for family friends, which is a nightmare because they don't pay well, but they ask everything of you, and you can't really talk to them about, like, hey, that's kind of not fair. And so I'm just like, and then the straw that breaks the camel's back is I end up in a game programming job where I'm trying to make a game, and that goes so south that I start, like, at this point I'm like bleeding friendships, contacts, because it's like the people you're working for, the people and suddenly it's like I don't even want to go outside anymore. And I get one more. I get to be key PA on a Roger Corman film called Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader in 3D. I'm at a low point, but I'm pretty busy at the time. But I'm getting pushed around, and I'm like, I really want to be a storyteller. Like, I want to write. I don't feel like my English minor helped me at all as a creative writer. It helped me a lot as a thinker and an analytic writer. And if I wanted to write for, slate.com, that might have been a possibility, But I was like, I want to go back to school. I want to learn how to tell stories better. And so I applied to 2 colleges for masters, AFI, USC. I get into both, and I go for USC. So best film school in the world. 3-year program. I move out of my parents' place to downtown with their help because I've been living at home for a couple of years. Note, every place I have ever lived is, with somebody else's help. I have never been, to this day, I cannot afford to live in LA, and if I wasn't from LA, I would have left a long time ago.
I think that's important to hear. I think that's like very real. I think that people who come out here without a plan or without an expectation of like how hard it's going to be, like, it's important to hear that. Like, yeah, like you are an LA local. You grew up here, and it's been hard for you.
I love people who come to LA. I have no problem.
Yeah, of course. But you got to be ready for
without the only people who have problem with out of towners are people who also came from out of town and are suddenly like, I'm from LA. Yeah. I think LA is one of the most amazing cities in the world, but it's also one of the most inaccessible. It's not a bad place to live. I know a lot of people like to shit on it. There are good places and bad places, but you got to have a car to know where to drive to and from. That's basically, it's the people.
Make the most of it for sure.
It's the food and the art, and I hope that it stays that way. But the people who work here cannot afford to work here. They can't. And that's true even for me today.
It's getting worse too.
It is getting worse. The inequality is worse. There's not enough residences being built, and things are just out of control. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, my point wasn't keep out. It was like be cautious. It's just
Here's something.
you have to be aware.
Here's something. When I was living at home, I didn't pay rent. When I was going to school, I was being helped because you're going to school. You know, you need somewhere to live closer to campus. But after that, it's it's. I think my parents were hoping, well, it'll light a fire under him, you know, if he needs to get a job to live. And it's like, yeah, well, I can get the jobs, but I'm being paid sub minimum wage. It's still not enough. No offense to them. It's just like it did get harder and harder and harder as time goes on. And after I graduate, you know, all the places I wanted to go or wanted to be like had gotten more expensive or changed, or, you know, it's just like the world had accelerated, and suddenly, and remember the thing, like I couldn't intern again. So it's like, okay, now I'm a guy who's been out of school for 6 years or just graduated from film school, you know, so it's sort of like, okay, I'm starting over. So I have to present myself in a way where I've started over again. And
oh, really?
One of the things I did in school was study sound, and I tried to make sound a career because everyone needs sound people. And I was super smart about sound. I knew everything. I was teaching the class, you know. But guess what? I couldn't interview for crap. I was crying in interviews because I was so stressed out. I didn't know this, but I had anxiety. Yeah. I had depression, clearly. I've had depression my whole life, and it has affected everything I've ever done, but I didn't know I had anxiety too. So here's a tip. If you have access to medical care and you can help yourself, depression and anxiety are going to affect the way other people see you. It's not something you can control. You can't control what they see in you, and you can't control the way you feel. These are chemical imbalances, and unfortunately, the world is really unforgiving. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's right, but anytime you have to choose between someone who's high maintenance or low maintenance, it's going to be low maintenance every time.
That's how it goes.
That's very true. It's like I relate to what you're saying because you're talking about depression, and it's something that I also deal with, and it's something that like stepping into like positions of leadership. Like I actually talk with my therapist about that a lot because it's like, unfortunately, even though I also wish that like mental health would be not stigmatized the way it is, it's like, you know, that you can't afford to present yourself in certain ways when you're like in certain positions, and it's really hard to balance those out. You're
not kidding. Literally can't afford, because after I graduate from USC, I'm no longer on health care. So guess what? I'm unmedicated, and trying to be a normal, balanced person is impossible for me. And so I spiral really bad after grad school, and you know, I'm just kind of like, I just kind of give up looking for myself. I kind of just focus on my relationship, you know, become sort of like the house husband, and you know, I'm driving Zoe to and from work, I'm cooking meals and doing the laundry.
I mean, that's valuable too. That's great.
But it's coming from a place of sort of like my loss of self, which is unfortunate, because I'm kind of giving up at this point. I just feel like no matter how many times I get a drink at the well, all my life experience doesn't matter if I can't make it work, and I can't make it work, and so I just do stuff with Zoe. We create a webcomic called Pizza Day Comics. We do conventions. Conventions are the reason I meet Gene. It's the first time I'm at WonderCon. We're both exhibiting near each other. So Gene and Casey, Galactica, and we hit it off. And, you know, I start to feel a lot better making comics with Zoe. She's working. She's doing these comics on the side, but we only do one a week. For some reason, we decide to do them mostly the night before, but we do them. I'm actually using everything I learned in film school to. I'm actually laying out the comics. for Zoe, and she's drawing the finals. But almost every comic we did started from a sketch of mine, and I know I've said it before. There's nothing more nervous making for me than drawing, but that's only when I'm being asked on the spot. And it's like when you see a director, like a live action director's storyboards, a lot of people are like, "Oh, these drawings are bad." It's like, no, these drawings are functional.
Yeah, you don't need them to be good.
But people have a weird idea about what a storyboard is supposed to look like because
they sure do.
And I just got a message for all of you storyboard artists who take late nights to make your boards look like animation. Please retire, because you're not making everyone look bad. You're making producers think that's the baseline.
Yeah, but that's also like what's expected of some productions now. I mean, it's because it's like a whole,
because of these people who have made such
effect.
a deal of showing off online. And I'm sorry, I'm happy for you that you have created the snappiest, most fun animation, but you have ruined animation for so many people due to your greed. But enough about that. Back to me. So yeah, I'm doing all this stuff, and then I decide, you know what? I want to do something writing related. You know, I want to be in a writer's room. I think about the first time I interned. That was the closest I got. I was interning, and I got to sit in with the writers and listen and learn things. And I'm like, I want to do that again, because that's a path to a career, right?
Yeah.
In animation, there aren't a lot of writers' rooms. I don't even know if I was looking at animation. I felt like I had more contacts in live action because those were the jobs I was doing after college. So I end up interviewing at was it Scott Free Productions. Is that right? Ridley Scott's production company. So I end up becoming a writer's PA, not a writer's assistant, not a script coordinator or SC, but a writer's PA on a show called Man in the High Castle, which had entered season 2. Footnote: I did get help to get in that room. I could not have just called that. That was I got help there. Okay, I'm just saying that in full discretion.
It's really important to hear, because I think you're right. I don't think you can really get any other jobs without having some sort of a connection to someone.
Yeah.
I agree, because every job I've ever gotten was because somebody else got me that interview. And there are plenty of interviews that people have gotten me where it went totally sideways. But I'm saying this not because, well, he got help, so of course he got the job. Well, remember the thing I said about confidence? Having somebody to speak up for you is confidence. And it helps you when you walk in. It is incredibly hard to get a response, to get FaceTime.
Yeah, I don't think confidence is only internal. I think that you have to surround yourself with people and circumstances that help you, because it's like, otherwise, like, where are you pulling it from? You know, like, you have to have some kind of foundation for it. So I think that's great to hear.
It's like what you were saying just earlier too. It's like hiring anyone is a risk. So having someone who's there to vouch for you is the only way you can, like, a production kind of does risk management, basically.
If I was on the outside, if I knew nothing about the industry and I heard that somebody got a job because they knew somebody, I would be like, they are a fake. They don't deserve to be there. And you know what? I might be right, but I might be wrong too.
Yeah, maybe.
You know what? That it's not the end all of the conversation, but getting the pieces to fall into place, it has to do with not who you know, but who knows you and is willing to say,
that's
I respect this person enough to put my neck out there. And that's a real thing you have to do in a industry like this one, not because it's cheating, but because it mitigates the risk factor of bringing someone unknown. It's so important to understand.
I think that you have a unique perspective in that, like, you do have these connections, and, you know, like your dad being a screenwriter and all this stuff, and so I completely understand. You know, for you, like, you were worried about not having people think that there's nepotism involved or that there's...
I can't change that. If someone said it was true,
yeah,
I might even agree with them. Look at me, like went to the best colleges, got, rent paid, like somebody accused me of like being depressed. Like my depression was unearned. Like I shouldn't be depressed.
Oh no, yeah.
Well, that's shitty. And
it was frustrating because they were making a point. It was like, you've had such a great life, and it's like, it's true, bro. No, it's true.
Yeah,
but that's not what depression is.
Yeah, that's not.
And I feel, I just, it's just like, if somebody wants to accuse me of that, you know what? It doesn't matter because you only see the results. You don't know what led there. You don't know all the pitfalls. Yeah. And I've had so many things that I am leaving out of this conversation. I'm just giving you the hits.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say, like, I think that, like, I've never had a job. I don't think I've ever gotten a job that wasn't somebody sticking their neck out for me. Like, not a single one. I've had to fight for everything I've ever been offered. And some people, they can submit a portfolio and they get in or whatever, or they have a resume, whatever the job is. But, like, I think that's totally normal. I think if somebody is going into, especially the entertainment business, and they have a weird stigma about people getting in because of somebody else, like, get the fuck out of here. Like, everyone is pulling. You should hope that people are pulling other people up for when they rise up the ranks or whatever, because that's like how you pay it forward. And
absolutely, that's a really good point.
I also think it's just, honestly, it's just networking. It's not
it's networking.
It's not nepotism. It's like, those are two very different things. It's like, networking is all about having to meet people like at conventions or online. Like we've kind of touched on networking on previous episodes, but I do feel like, for me, the only job that I got without anybody knowing me at the studio was a job that was paid so low that no other professional wanted it.
Wow, that's pretty dirty.
I know. It's like the only, that's the first gig I got. And, sometimes it works, sometimes, but it's like, that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Is like, if you're going to try to like go for positions that are highly competitive, unfortunately, a part of of what you need is also the networking, which can happen in so many different ways, right? It can be just like online, it can be conventions, it can be just like putting out
family,
putting out zines or comics that are, eventually someone stumbles upon it, like a director, and they're like, I love this comic, and then they vouch for you because they love your art. It's like, that but at the end of the day, I think it would be very unfair to expect out of people who want to get in the industry that they could get in without networking.
Yeah, that's something I've always struggled, networking. Having a group of friends that you can kind of all move up together and help each other out is one of the best things you can cultivate. And that's something that, because I think I've had to kind of start over so many times, I don't feel connected to a lot of people. I don't feel like I have that group, because my story just stretches back so far.
It's funny you feel that way, because I don't feel like that from my perspective, knowing you for as long as I have. Like, I think you know a lot of people, and
oh my God,
all in.
Oh, I know so many people. I've met Steven Spielberg twice for fun.
Wow.
Steven Spielberg himself.
I've been in a hot tub with Vince Vaughn and Joaquin Phoenix in Hong Kong, 1997. But you know what? None of that stuff matters if you don't love yourself.
True. That is very true. Yeah.
None of that at all. Even if I was a big braggart about these things, and by the way, I'm not. I'm actually very sensitive about these experiences, because I feel like a fraud all the time. I feel like a fraud. Even though, from your perspective, I've done some really cool things, because I've staked my personal identity so much on my career. Until I figured out how to separate the two, I have never felt comfortable. Now, I've worked in 2 writers' rooms. The first one is Man of the High Castle, and the second one is called Jean-Claude Van Johnson, or JCVJ, which was a hilarious comedy. I highly recommend it. It's on Amazon Prime. But I didn't do any writing. And the gamble you make being a writer's PA, which, by the way, is a glorified shopping assistant. You basically pick up the food, make sure the food is fresh every day, and pretend you don't care about writing because it's not on your like list of things to do. By the way, you have to literally like hide it because the hierarchy of a writer's room is sacred. I didn't do any writing, and I got really miserable, and I quit being a writer's PA because I was like, I actually hate doing this. I don't want to be someone's assistant. I want to be writing. So I quit everything, and I had some money saved up from being a PA, and I wrote for a year. I put everything out online. I retweet, reblog. I wrote some scripts. I was happy with the work, and I don't think anybody saw them at all. This is an entire year where I'm like, I am just going to be a pure writer. And it was a disaster. And I lost all my savings. Not a disaster creatively, but financially and emotionally.
Sure,
where it's like, wow, I don't exist in this larger space. I don't know what to do at this point. And so I took a retail job that I had applied for that summer, didn't get in, and then they needed like a 4th person. I ended up working at a video game import store in Little Tokyo.
Which is a great store.
It was a great store. It doesn't exactly exist. It's still a video game store, but new ownership. It's a really good time for me. I'm working only 3 days a week. I'm writing when I'm not there. I'm thinking about writing. I'm on my feet, 8 to 12 hours or whatever. Actually, I've spent a lot more time on my feet on film sets, so this actually feels a little easier. And I am enjoying my job because, if you set me loose, I'm going to put everything into it. And I put my heart into this, like dead-end retail job because I loved the people. I loved the games. I got into game modding, just
That
like
is so cool.
soldering, just like electrical work and just learning new stuff. And I joined a writers group that meets at We Spa. So that was really fascinating, and I got some writing done there. It's very interesting to try to focus after you've been in like the bulgogi room and fried. But yeah, I'm writing and I'm working, and I suddenly realize, why wasn't I doing that before? It makes so much more sense to be able to like. I'm making less than $300 a week. But working helps me focus. When I'm doing nothing, I'm just falling apart. So I have to be doing something, and that helps me write. That was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Yeah, it's really interesting you mentioned that because I actually relate to that a lot. I feel like kind of like the feelings that you describe of like when you're not working, like it's kind of like you don't really exist. I also find myself to be more productive when I have like a day gig. If I don't have like anything going on, it's like I don't know if that's like a hallmark of depression, but it's very relatable, and I also think it like gives you like a better like life hygiene to just like have like something to do every day. Kind of keeps you grounded, and then when you come back home you have more brain, like you're more free to be creative because you've had that other thing that kind of gave you like a little bit dopamine or serotonin.
Absolutely, and it separates the whole. When you go in and you have to hype yourself up, like you were talking, Gene, and that doesn't work, how that makes you feel, it may set you back. It may make you not want to do the thing you were saying you want to do, because suddenly it's like, well, if I'm not good enough for them, am I really good enough? But suddenly I'm doing a job which requires like very little emotional energy, and then I'm writing, but I'm just writing for myself. I can still put it online, but I'm not risking everything to do so. It feels more like, oh, now I can write. for fun, and it's a great feeling. And I worked there for a year. I joined Q Bomb, which is Gene's band. I'm doing things for the first time in my life for myself, where I really feel like, wow, like I'm taking all my interests, and this is awesome. You know what? It's not where I saw myself. It's not where I want to always be, but I'm actually like, I have a reason to get up. I get married to Zoe, and I'm like, that was like, I had no job. That was like before the retail. It was just like I had no job, I had no prospects, and
Yeah.
when we got to the like for richer or poorer, I'm like crying because I'm like, wow, I am a failure. Zoe, and she'll, one day you'll get to talk to her about her career. She's bounced around, but it's always been upward from my point of view. It was not easy to, like, you want to compare yourself, even though we didn't do the same things at all. We were very compatible, but it's just, you wanted to be like, well, we started Pizza Day together, but you went that way and I went this way, and it's sort of like, how come I never got my my start? When's my chance? And it's like, it never comes to you. I just want to say this out loud. Nobody is going to pick you up and put you where you belong. Unfortunately, even if you're the most talented person in the world, and I hope you are, nobody is going to give you the thing you want. You have to know what it is, and you have to be the one to get it for yourself. And there's no getting around this. I had to figure out my depression and my anxiety out before I got a job interview that changed my life. A job interview, which, by the way, I got from a friend, Sam Keston, who was at my wedding. And she knew that I was having trouble looking for a job. And she said, there's a PA opening at Cartoon Network on the show I'm on, Craig of the Creek. And I had the interview. I had several interviews. And I started taking Adderall, generic Adderall, at the same time. And I was the coolest motherfucker. I sat down in that room and I'm like, listen, I know Adobe Premiere and Storyboard Pro. You know why? Because I've been making animations with my wife, Zoe, for my whole life. Mm-hmm. I know the workflow. I've never done it professionally, but I have all this experience, which may work against me. But by the way, people hate it when you've done a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because they think, oh, they're not focused. Oh, I don't know what this person should be. So I just laid it on the table. I said, listen, you may look at this and be really confused at the roadmap of my life. I'm confused too, but I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to be part of the process. And if you give me a chance, I'll show you I can do it.
That's really great. Yeah, I love that whole, like, because your journey was like on multiple levels, right? It wasn't just like going to college and like having this specific goal. You had to figure yourself out. You had to figure out like kind of
absolutely
like aim where to go, like, oh, like kind of what studio, and kind of like there was like a lot of like unknowns that you had to figure out before you could make it work, on top of like it being a competitive field. Yeah.
I'm leaving out so many interviews, so many. I always write really long, like letters. When they say like, would you like to include like an extra thing when you apply for a job? And it's like you never hear back. It's the most heartbreaking thing in the world, where you're spending hours like trying to, I don't know, accomplish something and to get nothing for it. That's what it feels like, nothing.
Yeah, well, it all goes somewhere. I think.
I disagree. I think a lot of it goes into a hole that nobody look.
That's not what I mean.
That nobody looks at. No, I want to make a point. Is that applying for jobs is so confusing, especially in the entertainment industry. One of the first things I said is, you don't know why you don't get a job. A lot of times you can be doing all the wrong things, and no one will ever tell you because nobody will ever interact with you. I really recommend finding out how how job recruitment really works. Have you ever had a job recruiter on this podcast?
I don't think so. That's like a really
don't think
good idea, and I think we'll definitely aim for that.
Yeah, someone who comes to mind is Jesse Juano.
Oh yeah.
Who's also a writer and who is also
That's a great suggestion.
She's creating things on her own because if you're just trying to get a job doing the thing you want to do and you can't, then suddenly you're not writing. And what she's doing is, I think, what everyone who needs to be in a creative industry should be doing, which is like do something for yourself.
Do you feel like you mentioned earlier that you didn't know why you didn't get like a side job and like writing on the side earlier? Like you phrased it in the way kind of like that. What do you think was kind of like the change in your mindset between like that first kind of like all or nothing mindset and then the like, all right, let's just kind of like take it one step at a time kind of mindset?
I think it's weird. I think I just saw a lot of people who figured it out from my point of view. It always from your perspective. You see people, talk about. I saw like a meme going around Twitter the other day. What were your first X jobs? Like first 6 jobs, and it'd be like cashier, mowed lawns, picked up dog shit, and then directing at Disney TVA as the last one. And I was just thinking, like, yeah, no one's going to write that unless the job ends in some kind of like success story. And I guess it's supposed to be inspiring, but nobody talks about failure because it looks bad.
Yeah. Nobody wants to admit that when things didn't work out, and that's a shame because I think it's kind of a bigger part of life than success, unfortunately.
I think, that's very true. I think failure is like something that like needs to be not more talked about, but like we have to understand that failure is like a necessary part of growth. Like, like it's kind of like, I don't know, I always kind of take that analogy. It's like when you're a baby and you're going to learn to walk, you're going to fall down thousands of times before you can actually walk like a grown-up. So it's pretty much that's the same thing for a career, right? Is like you're going to apply to so many jobs and so many people are not even going to like reply. So many people you don't even know if they're ever going to like read your emails. I
think 98% of the time that's true. And I think everyone who's listening to this who is looking to jump in, preparing to fail will make you a stronger person. Not accepting defeat, not giving into cynicism. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is most of what you do is not going to work out, and that's okay. It's not your fault. The world is not a mediocrity. It does not pick the most qualified or talented people. They don't rise to the top. Some of the best people I know don't have jobs in the industry they want to be in, and they've gone off and done other things. Some of them are happy. Some of them are not. Your goal is to find happiness in your life, no matter what it is you're doing, and continue doing the thing that makes you happy, even when it's not your career, because if it really does make you happy, cutting it out of your life is like cutting a part of yourself.
That's great. I think that's really good. I think we get a lot of misconceptions. It's like we were saying earlier, we get this path drilled into us, which is like, go to college, get jobs.
Absolutely.
Now you are happy. And it's like, I don't think that's valid anymore. I think maybe for some career paths or whatever, but a lot of it is just kind of flailing around.
I definitely have a mixed answer for that. Because I feel similarly. You can follow somebody else's success story and never reach it for yourself.
Yeah.
You like learning about how people get into the industry is fascinating, but it's unique to that person. You have to remember that.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we try to have like a lot of different people on the podcast. And that's why I really like your story too, is to like it's really important to realize that it's like every path is different and there's so many different ways of like getting in the industry.
And you know what? To a lot of people, I am a huge success. and
Yeah,
that and
for
that's
sure.
and that's cool. I mean, you know what? I got a job at Cartoon Network in 2019, after graduating Vassar in 2009. That's a big deal to me. That's a real big deal. Yeah, I've been, at the bottom of the ladder for my whole life, professionally, but it is closer. It's not, what? It's not even, it's not even like, oh, and then I became a writer. It's like, well, no, then everyone started working from home, so I can't network, and
Yeah.
it's like I want to write in cartoons, and it's still, that's a different struggle. But the fact that I'm in a career as by the way, a digital production assistant, in the industry, animation, that's a miracle. So I'm taking that as a win.
It is.
Yeah, it is a win. Absolutely is a win. I struggle with that a lot. I mean, I think similarly, I think people look at me and feel like it's nothing but success, but it's like they're not paying attention to me. They are only seeing the highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
And there's months, if not years, where I'm like stagnant and I feel like I can't break through, and I'm stuck at the level that I'm at. And like, and the last year was fucking brutal for everybody, I think. And like, so much had to be halted. And nobody wants to talk about how badly like when they're going through a bad time, because you don't want to drag everyone down, you don't want to come off like a pity case, and so it's like really fucking hard because you get trapped in this loop of like, I feel like shit, I need help, and I don't know how to break out of it. And so yeah, I think no matter what level you get to or what people perceive success looks like, it's never going to be easy, and it's always a roller coaster, and it's always going to be like, and honestly, and it's something I talk to like my therapist about, and it's like the up and down, where it's like you'll have a career hit and you'll have a good year or maybe even just a good week.
100%. Yeah.
But there's always going to be, even the successful people have low points. And like really bad, and then especially once you've had a taste of it, then it's pretty fucking rough, because then you really feel like shit.
Well, you've had some experience, Gene, like me, going online, going on Twitter, and posting an image and a text that basically says, "I'm looking for work," and it's not your fault that the algorithm posts that say, "I just got an awesome job," to people who are saying, "I'm looking for work." Like some messages are suppressed. And it makes you, again, like when you apply for a job and don't hear back, it makes you feel like something's wrong with you.
Oh yeah. That was a rough. It really chips away at your ego and stuff. But yeah, the algorithm is bullshit, and it also like it favors extremes, and so
I guess that's
like
true.
You said, it's like you said, it's like either I got a new job and everyone goes wee yay, and
I'm happy
to
to congratulate people.
I'm happy for them too. Yeah,
but those are definitely going to be seen and interacted with more.
Yeah,
it's impossible to talk about the realities, the day-to-day, the low points, because those messages get lost in the noise.
And it's not like, because I think we all see life through this narrative lens, right? Like,
we have to present a version of events that looks like, like you're having an okay time. And for the most part, I think I am. But,
I think so.
But there's been times where it's highly curated.
Yeah.
I think definitely social media has that problem as well. Like, I think it's fostered by social media, but it's also like in human nature, right? It's like if someone doesn't tell you that they're not doing okay, you're going to assume they're doing fine. Like I've actually heard that from a lot of my friends when one day I would open up to them and be like, actually, I'm really not doing too hot. And they're like, really? And it's like, it's this thing. It's like, you're not going to like, because we're also just like individuals, and it's really hard for an individual to be always like connected on that kind of like emotional level with like their peers. So it kind of makes sense that you're like, well, especially it's kind of like that thing, if it's like, if you're hurting, you're not going to think about how somebody else is hurting too, like you don't have like the bandwidth for it. So I think it's kind of embedded in human nature. I think it's good to talk about like the hard times though, because it does kind of help kind of bond and just understand that, yeah, it is part of it really is part of life, and like growing and like learning how to be resilient.
But it's nuts to me that like now in this very wired age that the way that you present yourself like really does matter, and it and so it's like it really behooves you to go viral.
Yeah.
And nothing else. Now I want to actually change the conversation a little bit away from like defeated feelings,
Sure.
which are I felt like defined my life for a long time, and that was a narrative that I had about myself that nothing might work out. I joke depression is different from anxiety. It's anxiety is what if something goes wrong, but depression is it will never go right. It's like a kind of finality, whereas anxiety trips you up in the moment because you're worrying so much about outcomes. I, at a particularly fragile point, received some really interesting life advice from Zoe, which is, I think I was saying something to her where it's like, I don't feel like I've accomplished anything that I've wanted to do, and I feel like a failure. And she's like, "Oh, you got friends," and I'm like, "What is that, man? What is it? And she said, "Listen, they love you for you."
Yeah.
And that was like one of the most eye-opening statements, because I had forgotten to love myself at all. I was so in hate with myself, in loathing with myself, that I forgot a really important thing, which is you have to be your own biggest supporter. You have to love yourself.
And that's really hard. I'm just putting it out there just in case anyone's listening and they're like, well, yeah, great. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? Yeah, it's hard. It's something to be worked on.
Yeah,
you know what?
hard.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That was I feel like the beginning of true success for me was realizing I do have all these friends. There are people who really care about me, and I started to care about myself more, because they can't help you. Just like no one can get you a job, like literally get you a job. No one can make you feel better about yourself if you can't. And that's really tough, especially if you're struggling, don't have access to healthcare, to a therapist. That is not something that you're going to probably be able to do yourself. And I'm sorry to say that, because it puts you at an enormous life disadvantage. I will say, though, once you start becoming your best cheerleader, once you're able to always hold on to things that you're happy with and proud of, moments in your life, the fact that I have an incredible relationship with Zoe is one of the most important things. Like, a lot of people are like, I wish I had what you have.
I was going to say, yeah, I feel like a lot of people can't seem to find that significant other for themselves. So, like, that amazing, like, I mean, you guys are best friends, obviously, but it's just like that deep bond is great.
And it's like once you start to really, like, you're able to clearly see those things about yourself and about your relationships. But, that's the thing that's going to hopefully keep you afloat, and be able to, carry on through the lean times. Because if you don't have those things for yourself, you don't see a future. If you can't look back and say, I exist, I have been in people's lives, I have done something that I'm proud of, you will quickly spiral. You will lose sight of everything.
Yeah. Something I've started doing over this last year is just like trying to take stock of what's going right, and like the stuff that is good, stuff that other people might wish they had. And it helps. It helps kind of,
even if it doesn't feel like an accomplishment to somebody else, it is, and you have to start seeing it that way. You can't say I'll only be happy when this thing happens.
Yeah.
To me.
That's
you wanna die unhappy? Go ahead, buddy.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a quick recipe. And it's honestly, it's really good to watch videos of people who are quote unquote successful, like talk about that. And there's a lot of stories of that where like my therapist turned me on to a video with Moby, and Moby was talking about how he grew up like rich, or he grew up poor in a rich area. And so he always had this perception of what it meant to be successful and this and that, and like, but never could never get it. And then when he really blew up, he just kept chasing this unattainable goal of happiness, thinking that it would be material. And he like used to dream of living in the apartments overlooking Central Park, and because they're like these super expensive apartments.
Oh yeah.
And these amazing like 5-story units. And so he had enough money to buy one of those, and he like put all this money into like renovating it and making it this perfect home for him. And he like stood out on the balcony and looked over Central Park and still felt so empty.
Wow.
And like nothing was, and it's like, and after that he kind of stopped chasing that. Like he realizes like, I am never going to be happy if I don't. And he lives in like a smaller place in like Eagle Rock or something, and like just kind of makes music. I mean, he has the benefit of having a, financial security and everything. But I think the two are intertwined, and I think like when you kind of let go of chasing that ridiculous, like unattainable dream, you find an inner peace a little bit.
Yep.
And then it's kind of centers you a little more. And then things will usually start to click. In my experience too, it's like the more you let go.
Yeah. Can I say a funny thing about that?
Please do.
It shouldn't work. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But the moment that you stop desiring and caring so hard about like what you want, the closer you get to it.
Yeah.
It's really remarkable, but it's just like once you come to terms, like make peace with like reality is random. It doesn't. It's about luck as much as it is timing, as much as it is talent. It's like these are all dice rolls. Every single thing that happens in your life, and it's like once you come to terms with that, and you're not as desperate to achieve some idea of success starts to come to you.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's hard to believe, but it's true.
And I agree that financial security is a part of that. I don't think also you could do that without having friends, and I don't mean like the kinds of friends that are in an industry, but I just mean like you can't go through life alone. You need a connection. One of the things that really helped me was joining a writing group. I actually, after I left that first writing group, I joined another writing group with Kira Presley, and it's just like, oh my God, there's all these other people just like me. I'm not alone. I thought I was alone, and I'm not the only one. And it's like, holy shit, this is amazing. You if you go into life thinking like, I have to be pure, I will never taint myself, I will never collaborate, I will never open up myself to other people, I am hot shit, and I'm going to get where I'm going entirely on my own, well, it might not be as simple as you think. I think it's so important to have people in your life, to have, just whether or not it has to do with your passions, but
100%,
don't hide it all away. Don't not show it to anyone. It sucked writing for a year and feeling like no one saw it. But if I had been in a writing group, but gosh darn it, we could have all read each other's work, and that would have been all the difference. It's not that I needed an agent, a manager to read it. I needed somebody to read it, and just to people want to know that they're being heard.
Yeah, for sure. I think that I'm curious to know, because you've talked about these periods where you just felt so low, and
ooh, yeah.
What does creative block look like to you, and how do you break out of it?
That's a really good question. I feel like I don't have a huge problem when it comes to getting motivated creatively, I would say the harder part is keeping kind of a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So let's like, if I'm firing on all cylinders, I'll be able to write any time of day. I've done late nights. I've woken up early, when there were deadlines. I'm a writing machine. However, if I'm in a situation where I'm unmotivated physically and emotionally, where I don't want to crawl out of bed, that's going to be worse for my productivity than, like, say, oh, I can't think of what to write. To me, it's like a complete sort of like, I don't feel like it. I'm not even waiting for inspiration to hit me. I'm kind of like, I'm just going to play video games all day because I can. So when you don't have structure, suddenly the bottom falls out. Creating structure, saying, I write better in the mornings than the afternoons, so I'm going to just sit down between 9 to noon and write and just try to focus. And, some days I write a couple pages. Maybe one day I'm just revising. It's not as much getting done, but you're pushing it forward a little bit day by day. I think the most important thing is, just like when I did Pizza Day Comics, we stuck to a schedule, and that helps.
That helps a lot.
Writing on a schedule, even when there's not really a reason for it. The reason for it should be because I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
So
comics are great for that.
I love webcomics. I wish we could keep doing Pizza Day Comics. I still have like a ream of ideas. Like, if we could just go back, I have so many strip ideas. But it's hard. We're both, Zoe and I are both working right now. We have a lot of extracurriculars, and
you guys are busy.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
You're doing your own thing in other ways. So
it's funny. I'm working so hard because one day I tell myself there'll be less work, and I'm like, yeah, right.
That's I'm drawing like Shaman King. I've been reading Shaman King, and I'm drawing them right now. Mm-hmm. And that's like, it's funny because that's the main character's whole thing. Is it's like, I'm gonna become basically God so that I don't have to do anything anymore. And I think it's I know D loves it too. Yeah, it's like, it's such a great attitude, and I feel like that is kind of what everyone's trying to aspire to. Because retirement, we all aspire towards retirement, which is, you do whatever you want. And I don't know. I think that's interesting.
Yeah,
I think that's an interesting approach. We actually got some good questions.
Yeah.
That we would love to ask you. From @KMakesThings. Hi, Jake. What advice would you give to other professionals who want to keep one foot in live action and one foot in the animated world? Is it practical to juggle both?
Hey, KMakesThings. That's a really good question. But my first reaction would to be no, it is not practical to juggle both. Not because you couldn't do it, but because somebody who looks at you and says, what do you want to do, live action or animation? And you're like, I am proficient and enjoy doing both. People are going to get really like, this person doesn't know what they want, because people can't extrapolate. If you have a lot of interests, people think you're not good at them, or you're wishy-washy, or it's sort of like, this person is unfocused. So unfortunately, if you work in one field and have one special job, and people know you're good at it, you will be stuck doing that thing forever. And that's kind of frustrating to people who want to do other things but find security doing the thing that they're known for. So be careful. It's easy to get pigeonholed, especially between live action animation. People think you have to stay in one world or the other. However, due to pandemic, a lot of live action writers have suddenly realized they can also be animation writers.
Yeah.
And they've been taking a lot of those jobs away, and it's kind of funny because the Writers Guild doesn't stick their neck out for any animation people. But suddenly they're very interested in how to write for animation. So I think the distinction is bullshit, but it does exist. It may be changing a little bit due to the landscape, but just keep in mind, when you are presenting yourself, you have to really narrow it down to the thing that you want them to see. And sometimes that means leaving parts of yourself out. Unfortunately, it doesn't make you. I always thought if I talked about everything, they'd be super impressed. They are confused when you tell them everything. So just like for every job you apply to, be specific how, if you're going to bring up stuff, how that applies to the thing you're trying to do. And be very explicit. Do not let them guess. Just draw those conclusions for them. And use the keywords that they put out on their, like job board, and like work that into your narrative. So you're not lying about yourself. You are just maneuvering your narrative to fit what they're looking for.
I like that you mentioned the words, like the keywords, that like the lingo. It is very true. It's something that it took me a really long time when people are like, during interviews, what do you like to do? And I was like, I like to do storyboards, and it's not like specific enough. And then I was like, oh, I like heart and comedy. And it's like, those are like words that are like, yeah, heart and comedy, whatever, but they're part of the lingo. And it's like, oh, this is really important. It's like, learning those keywords, and like, you can like learn those by like reading a lot of like pitch Bibles, or like reading like a lot of like how people present a show when like they like announce it or whatever.
Pitching is a really interesting art. And Gene, I think you have something coming up about pitching, don't you?
It's already happened by the time this came out, but that's
a bit of time travel right there.
Yeah, a little bit of time travel, but yeah, me and Pedro Aboli did a talk, I guess, about pitching. And yeah, it is an art form, and it's one that it's people say it like takes 10,000 hours to get good at something or whatever, to master something. And I think pitching is kind of in that. It falls into that, because you just have to do it. You just have to try it over and over. And
I say that because pitching isn't just limited to, I want to be a showrunner. Pitching is something you do when you say, I want a job and I'm pitching myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like the first step is you have to believe you can do it.
Yeah, confidence, number one.
And then present examples in your life of when you did something similar to the job you're trying to get, and do it confidently. And when they say, are you experienced in something? And in your head, you're like, no, I'm not. You can say, yes, I have some experience. And so, like, do not try to be overly don't try to be too real, where you're like, I don't have enough experience, because that's your anxiety. If you have some life experience, that's your experience. Use it.
Yeah. It's like I was saying, you're selling yourself, and it's all about spin and how you reframe things. Because chances are, if you're applying to a job, you could do it, and you do have the right experience. And it's not always going to happen, because again, it depends on what the employer is looking for, and you don't know that, but you can put yourself into the best position possible by just taking what you have acquired, the knowledge and whatever, and like framing it in a way that makes you look great.
I also want to talk really quickly. There's a huge difference in the scheduling in live action versus animation.
Oh yeah.
And one big difference is, in live action, pre-production takes a long time, but production is a short period. Whereas
that's true.
In animation, production is the bulk of what an animated show goes through, and there's not a lot of lead up into like the pre-production, and then, of course, there's post-production in both, and I would say maybe about the same, but definitely there's a bit of a flop there. So in live action, historically, and I say this because who knows what it's going to be like a minute from now, but historically, live action is based around upfronts, and the idea of, it's not actually, scratch that. TV schedules were always based around the idea that in the springtime there would be a presentation from the company selling the shows and the movies to the advertisers, and that things would go into pre-production in fall and then go into production at the beginning of the year so that that thing could be advertised at the spring event, and there, things would go by that cycle. So there are schedules to when like shows are sold in the summer so that they can get a pilot made in the fall so they can go into production if they're greenlit in the winter, and that's changed a little bit, but it may help you to know that because, for instance, internships that companies offer are based around those cycles, summer, fall, winter, or writing competitions or other things like that happen at certain times of the year, not by accident, but because of the way that the industry has always kind of functioned. So it's worth finding out how it works so that you're not just kind of sitting around and being like, well, when do the jobs happen? Because there are cycles to it. And there are times where it's like you kind of do feel like you miss out on a big thing. And that's not always true. But just be aware there are better periods than others. End of the year, things slow down and die off.
Always, yeah. We had a question from @gamerdude50002. Anyway, my question would be, what advice would you give to others who also want to be writers in the animation industry and or artists? Would you recommend going to college? And they're about to apply in the coming weeks since it's their senior year.
Wow, that's a great question. I think I would not be where I am today if I hadn't gone to college. That said, I don't know where I'd be if I hadn't gone to college. That's not an open answer, but I will say, for me, I needed to go to school. I needed to get some information that maybe I could have gotten online or elsewhere. I don't think I could have made that argument to my parents. I think they wanted me to go to school, and I definitely, I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. So I got something out of college. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I think that when you're in college, what you major in is pretty important. Not because there's a piece of paper that says you're intelligent, but because the world expects that you know what you want to be the moment you get out of school. Everything you do during school, you have a really great safety net. It's school. Like, if you fail there, it's not real life. But once you're out of school and you're not sure what job you want, that's going to set you back a bit. Take time during college to learn what jobs are out there. There's no general animation job. In fact, most jobs have nothing to do with animation as an art. But people think all sorts of things, what a character designer does, what a storyboard artist does, they're completely wrong. Research those jobs and focus in areas, in addition to things that just interest you, because you need that to be a well-rounded person. But think about, what job would I want to have when I get out, and how can I prepare for that? It's not just that you went to school. Give yourself an advantage and really think about that. Nobody told me like you had to be this or that, and I made a choice that I thought was right for me, and I wish I had maybe thought about it more, or just had the advice given to me that I'm trying to give to you. So don't not go to college. Don't go to college because you think it's going to lead you somewhere. You have to make that decision, and then you have to work towards that. Nothing is given to you.
That's a really good way to put that. What kind of goals do you have for the near future?
I think my basic goal is to be able to support Zoe and myself financially. If I lived in obscurity my whole life, but was able to, keep a roof over our heads and food on our plate, I would choose that in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, no such job exists, so I will continue trying to find, new, better paying work. Because although my job is stable, it is also kind of a dead end right now. A digital production assistant you could conceivably stay in production and maybe move up as a PC, production coordinator, or a PM, production manager. If you want to become a line producer, which is different from being a creative executive. So just keep that in mind. Production is about keeping all the gears running. It is not about making creative choices. It's about keeping the machine running. You are interacting with every element of the team. And if that appeals to you, like it does to me, production's a cool place to be. But it is not, like some people say, a springboard into other jobs. It's actually, that's wrong. And I think it's horrible that people say that, because it makes it harder for people to get production jobs now, because as soon as you say, I'm an artist, they will ignore you. Because they're like, this person is not serious about production. So it's like, well, that's bad advice. Just because, just like when I was a writer's PA, I had to pretend I didn't want to be a writer, and they expect the same thing of production people. Newsflash, every single person in production is interested in the end product. They don't get to do the things necessarily they want to do. Some people maybe are born to be line producers, but without naming names, a lot of them went to art school too. So you can get stuck there.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Yeah, I think it's hard. Like I would love to bring you back actually for another episode at some point, because I think there's stuff that we didn't even get into. I think they're just like the work you're doing, the all the other sort of interests and hobbies that you have, because I think there's a lot there. And
thank you. I'd love to come back too.
Yeah, we'll definitely have you back on. But I think you did a great job of sort of talking about the struggle and the process of just getting to the point where you've broken in. I think that's something that we love to hear, and it's an interesting perspective. So that's a good foundation episode for the story of Jake Strick. And,
still ongoing, by the way.
Still ongoing, yeah. All our stories are ongoing until we're dead in the ground. But thanks so much for coming on the show. That was really helpful. I think people will get a lot out of that.
Thank you, and I hope it helps people. There's a lot that you don't see coming, and there's a lot you have to learn about yourself.
I agree.
In life. So I'm really glad to get to share part of my story.
Anything you want to plug while you're on here?
Oh, yeah. I definitely want to plug Q-Bomb.
Oh, shit. Who's that?
Oh, just about the coolest hyperpunks you've ever heard of.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. I hear there's a guy in the band, Jake Easy, synth player. Yeah. Totally the man. Oh, yeah. He's a Chad.
He's a fucking Chad.
I'm part of a band with Gene. Gene, thank you for having me in Q-Bomb. It's been so much fun just to, again, I love music, but I love, playing in a group, because we not just with an audience, but just with each other. It's been just like a lifelong ambition. I didn't realize how awesome it would be to be in a band, and holy hell, we are a pretty cool band. So
we're pretty cool.
Yeah. So check us out on the streaming services. By the time this comes out, we will have played our first show of the year, but we're gonna play some more, hopefully, as the year goes on and beyond. So Q-Bomb or Q-Bomb Band on all social media sites.
Hell yeah.
And that's like the letter Q, not QAnon.
Yes. God no. Well, that's the end of this creative block. Thanks to Jake for being our guest and sharing his story.
And thanks to your listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Block, creative without the vowels, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask your guests. Huge thanks to my sister Clemens for editing the podcast.
And hey, we have a Patreon now. So go check the link in the description. And if you want to support us, we'd really appreciate it. And subscribe to the channel if you love our content. I've been your host, Gene.
And I was B. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.